Do you know where you come from? Or as we say here all the time in Northern Ireland, how important is it to you to find out where you come from? For genealogist Boyd Gray, who lives in Lifford in County Donegal, you hear how important it is to him.
I've come in from the cold of the graveyard, but I think for you, Boyd, it is a very popular spot. In fact, any old graveyard, the older the better, maybe?
Yeah, I do enjoy my graveyards, tramping around them, as I say. And that one that you were in, Clonley Old Graveyard, is a very special graveyard because it is so incredibly old. It's also Church of Ireland graveyard, and as such it contains burials not just of Church of Ireland people but also Presbyterians and therefore Ulster Scots, and it contains Catholics as well, native Irish people. You were in Clonley Old Graveyard. Now that's where the old Church of Clonley Parish, Lifford Parish, used to be, but now it is down in Lifford Town itself. Clonley Parish Church is in Lifford Town itself. And it has quite an old graveyard round it as well. And in that old graveyard, there is a large memorial to an Andrew Gardner VC. He won the Victoria Cross. Now, how many people won the Victoria Cross? Not very many, really. There's a VC buried out there in Lifford, and nobody knows about it.
And is that a really fascinating side of genealogy? You see the names on the headstones, you know, the birth and the death date. Don't you want to know more?
Well, yeah, I certainly do want to know more. Some people who are into genealogy get fascinated and fixated by creating as big a tree as possible. It's a bit like Facebook, I suppose. You want to have as many friends as possible. And it becomes simply a name-collecting exercise. But it has never been that for me. But what has always fascinated me is the stories behind all of those names.
It's headstones you look at for names and information, but you also go to the very paperwork, the records that have been kept by churches, by the authorities, those sorts of official records.
I don't know if you're aware or not, but we have a huge problem with genealogy in Ireland in that the censuses for Ireland were destroyed. The censuses began in 1821. In 1821, 31, 41 and 51, believe it or not, were deliberately destroyed during the First World War to create paper. So they were pulped, destroyed. We lost them, and then 1861, 71, 81 and 91 were lost in the Civil War in Ireland whenever the Four Courts was attacked by the Free State troops and set on fire. So we lost all of the records, all of the censuses for the 19th century, all 8 of them disappeared. And that makes it extremely hard to go back much further than about 1770 in researching genealogy in Ireland. We'll come back to the Mormons later on if you want to know about them. They play a huge part in genealogy. What you really want is something that will give you an idea of where people came from, first of all. And we have a census substitute, something that replaces those censuses to a certain extent, called the Griffiths Valuation, which was a land survey done in Ireland. Well, it was published in the 1850s. It was actually started in the 1820s. And it was a huge survey of the entire island of Ireland, with all of the houses on it, all of the fields, all marked out, maps done, maps produced to go with it, and it recorded the head of every household. But it was put online very recently, so you can actually go online now, and if you're looking for somebody in the 19th century, if you're looking for an ancestor in the 19th century, his family should be in the Griffiths Valuation online. I help people from America in particular, but also Australia and New Zealand, who want to find their roots. That's what I spend all my time doing now. I've done my own family tree until there's practically nothing left to do.
Right.
By the way, that's the other thing I was going to say. It's the huge pleasure of doing genealogy is that I send this information back to them, all knowing, all knowing, very, very clever. And then they write me back these emails saying, I'm sitting here, one woman in particular said, she was from Australia, and she said, I'm sitting in the morning sunshine in front of my computer and there are tears running down my face because you found my ancestry. So I do get a huge reward from emails coming back like that for people that I have found.
You're talking about doing research using the internet, but obviously for you over the years it must have involved a lot of searching through handwritten records. What's that like?
It's great fun. Well, I must sound like a dreadful bore, but it really is great fun. I was doing it recently with the Clonley Parish Church records that I was talking to you about earlier. There's one thing I was looking at was the marriage register dating from 1845, and it was a John McLaughlin had married a Jane McCrudden, and mostly farm labourers in those days couldn't read or write at all. Almost invariably, you have a little cross with what the minister had written above or below it, his mark or her mark. That's what you normally get. But in this instance, they had signed. John McLaughlin had signed his name. His writing was pretty unsteady, and below it you could see where his new wife, this young lady who was setting out on the path of life with her young gentleman, had tried to write her own name as well, and it was awfully spidery. Not only was it awfully spidery, she had written John McCrudden. She couldn't spell her own name, she couldn't write her own name, she had written John instead of Jane. Isn't that awfully sweet? If he looked at it and saw it and maybe put his arm around her, it's recorded there for eternity, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it, dear."
But you're seeing
Isn't
the
that
people.
lovely?
You're seeing the people. That's what you like, isn't it? You want to know.
Yeah, and I hope it's romantic.
Are you?
I think
What about orphan children? What happened to them?
that was the other thing that I was going to mention, actually, from the Clonley Parish Church records. What a lot of people don't realise is that going back into the 19th century, almost all services, local government that we now consider to be provided by central government in Dublin or London or wherever, were provided by the local parish church. They were the government. They ran everything. And the records of their running of affairs in their parish are recorded in the vestry minutes of every parish church. If you get your hands on it, you can read it, and it's absolutely fascinating because, for example, they were responsible for building the roads. Mundane enough, but it's there. They're also responsible for a lot of law and order, including the destruction of illicit stills, so that when people were making moonshine, they were supposed to be searching out those stills and destroying them.
They destroyed them in a minute.
Well, they made one man responsible for it.
So people's behaviour in the local community was recorded.
In the vestry minutes. Yeah, exactly. And
great to get your hands on those.
But you asked about orphans, and that is one of the most poignant, saddest and interesting things in the vestry minute books. There was always a vestryman who was appointed to look after foundling children. That's what they called them, foundling children. And foundling children, obviously, were children abandoned by unmarried mothers. Every year, in, for example, Clonley records, there probably are 4 or 5 or 6 foundling children being looked after. After a year, they were taken to the foundling hospital in Dublin. See this recorded in the vestry minutes book. So and so gets such and such an amount of money for taking such and such a child to the foundling hospital in Dublin. End of story.
Why do you mention the Mormons there in the Church of the Latter-day Saints?
For reasons that aren't always very clear, the Mormons have taken it upon themselves to collect any records that relate to family history. They send out their workers to repositories, archives, libraries all over the world to photograph these records, and all of those photographs are kept on microfilm, and they're kept in the vaults in Salt Lake City, and I've seen various figures on the internet where they have 300 million microfilms in Salt Lake City. Why do they do it? I go down to the Mormon church every Thursday night, and have been doing that for 6 or 7 years, and they're absolutely lovely people. They really couldn't be more helpful. They don't try and convert you, and nobody's ever asked me to become a Mormon or anything like that, and you don't like to be too nosy. I have been told that they believe that when they die they will meet all their ancestors in heaven, and it would be very rude not to know something about them. So they do encourage their own members of the church to do their family history. And as far as we're concerned, it's an absolute gold mine. They now have put them online. I don't think it has been officially released yet because we still call it the pilot site.
Do you just love the speed of the internet, or are you your records and paper and handling the names, man?
This is not going to be a very satisfactory answer. I have to say both, to be honest. Because the internet, you couldn't do without the internet now. You insert vast quantities of documents in microseconds, but at the same time, nothing beats the smell of those old registers whenever you open them up and you get the smell coming through from 150 years ago, and you can actually see the handwriting of that lady as she signed. poor old Jane McCrudden, who wrote herself as John. So they both are beautiful.
Boyd Gray with Helen Mark.